Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Arctic Wire Rope and Supply, an Alaskan company providing lifting and rigging products since 1983. Manufacturing custom wire rope, chains, and nylon slings here in Anchorage. On the web at arcticwirerope.com.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service. Merry Christmas to you and yours, wherever and however you celebrate. 25th after December. The year is almost at a close, and it is getting cold out there. For the very latest observations around Alaska, if you'd like to take a look at other parts of the area, or if you'd like to know exactly how much pain you're in for tonight, look for temperatures across the interior that are probably pushing 50 below in some cases. All of that and more at arh.noaa.gov or weather.gov. We'll get you there as well. The weather info line is open at 800-472-0391. Find us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube under NWS Anchorage. And after the show, a little bit later, you'll be able to find the entire broadcast from our friends at Alaska Public, the station where we are right now. You can search for AKWX TV on YouTube or go to Alaska Public to view the broadcast in its entirety. Here's a look at weather that's on the hazardous end of things across southeastern Alaska. The warnings and watches there have been dropped at this point. No more advisories for snow. Those storm totals in some areas, especially around Haines and the Skagway region and the Chilkat valleys, likely approached a foot or even more in some cases there. Also north of Auk Bay last night, some heavier snowfall there. Yakutat continued to see precipitation that was pretty steady throughout the day. Barely under the red dot there in Valdez, you can see a little highlighted area. That's the Thompson Pass region. Winter weather advisory there for dangerous wind chills tonight and strong wind gusts. And a look farther north across the Beaufort Seacoast and across the passes there around the east and southeastern Brooks Range. Wind chill advisories there for the passes with blowing snow advisories for parts of the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. Now, areas along the eastern Beaufort, we're looking at wind speeds there gusting upwards of 40 to 48 miles per hour earlier today, and that will likely continue as we head through the daytime tomorrow. And if you have trucking travel plans that take you northward on the ice roads tonight and tomorrow, be prepared for bitter and dangerous cold there with that wind added in for extra kick. So be extra careful if you're headed in that direction. Here's a look at the Bering Sea. You can see a wide swath of cloud cover moving across the Alaskan Peninsula here, the eastern Aleutians, a dry patch, and then another surge of low pressure working its way toward the western and central parts of the chain right here. This slug of moisture will likely kind of work its way out across the eastern Aleutians and then be shredded back into the greater circulation that we'll see in the jet stream pattern here in just a little bit. The pattern really hasn't changed too much, and we still see a lot of the activity working its way in from the south across the Gulf of Alaska. Here's our next wave of low pressure here and the slug of moisture that was working into south and east. If you watch carefully right here, watch for a little puff from the jet stream working over the snow right over northern parts of southeast earlier today, and boom, the snow is done. Just like that, the power of the upper levels of the atmosphere have just as much to do with what's going on at the bottom of the atmosphere when cold fronts and wind shifts take place as well. So whole lot of activity going on just in southeast today. Now for most of Alaska, the weather word for the day is just simply cold, maybe frigid. Find your other weather word. I'm sure there are many more. It looks like most areas around the eastern interior, we're looking at temperatures anywhere from 40 to in some cases almost 50 below thanks to high pressure at 1,029 millibars. Another very stable air mass here across the upper Yukon, just locked in some nasty cold across many areas like Bettles at 46 below, Northway, Eagle, and Tok, all looking at temperatures that were more than 40 below throughout most of the day. Out across the west, a frontal boundary working across and north of the Aleutian chain is slowly falling apart, very, very slowly. We're starting to see that process take shape here south of the Alaska Pen. The main focus for active weather continues across the Gulf and across parts of southeast where the frontal boundary is dying out there. You can see it kind of locking up against the Gulf Coast this afternoon and this evening. With more of a southerly flow coming into southeast ahead of the warm front, look for rain to continue across parts of Sitka, southern sections of the chain, and southeast, and look for areas around the northern parts of southeast to continue to see light snow, maybe another couple inches on top of what you already have, even though the advisories and warnings have been dropped to this point. Light snow will continue across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast, and even as high pressure is there, it does look like that parallel flow to the coast will keep blowing and drifting snow possibility. So once again, wind chill advisories and winter weather advisories continue for that area. Wind chill advisories for some of the passes there across the eastern parts of the Brooks Range. This frontal boundary here is going to kind of fall apart very slowly. It's not really a very well-formed front. There certainly is much colder air to the north and much warmer air to the south, but it's not really a very solid boundary at all. So as the next wave of low pressure works itself northward, we'll just see that kind of erode a little bit more. We may still find some showers along that, generally in the form of snow out across the Bering with plenty of fog and probably poor visibility at times as far south as the southern and the central Aleutians. Notice too that moisture is coming up over the top of that with low pressure working its way very close to Adak and Eka at 965 millibars. Low pressure is parked just south and west of Yakutat and east of Cordova at 997 millibars. And we're getting most of that snow working itself into British Columbia and the southern Yukon now. Enough warm air sloshing back into central and southern parts of southeast. Primarily what you're dealing with now is rain. Pressure gradients tightening up though as we head into Thursday. Watch for windier conditions not only around Thompson Pass but probably in the Narrows as well down below. And for some parts of the inner channels, don't be surprised to run into some stronger gusts. We may have some of those stronger easterly gusts coming across the north side of the Alaska Peninsula into the Bering Sea as well. For Friday, frontal boundary still lingering right across the Gulf Coast. Tight pressure gradient here across south central. We'll probably start Thursday with fog across south central. Some of that was already working its way into Anchorage earlier this evening. That may let up if the winds kick up, and then once the winds settle down again, the fog may return. For parts of southeast, the winds should settle down a little bit more into Friday. Rain may taper off with another slug coming in as we head into Friday night, maybe Saturday. And notice low pressure here at 978 millibars working its way toward Nikolsky and Unalaska Dutch Harbor next to come, with a front working over Bristol Bay. Looks like some light snow probably shaping up across southern parts of Bristol Bay earlier in the day, and as Friday goes on, that line may march northward closer and closer to Bethel, probably making it through King Salmon and Dillingham by the end of Friday afternoon, and also across Prince William Sound, the eastern parts of the Kenai Peninsula, and perhaps some rain and snow showers around Kodiak Island. Areas of blowing snow still possible across the Arctic coast. Temperatures today, oh goodness, nearly 90 degrees difference between the warm and cold spots in Alaska. It's pretty extreme stuff, as we all know. 46 degrees down around Heidelberg this afternoon. Look like temperatures there pushed pretty close to the mid to upper 40s earlier today. I think 48 it was the maximum temperature we saw there. 39 in Juneau, 27 around Haines and Skagway, 34 in Yakutat, 20s and 30s around Prince William Sound. The Cook Inlet side considerably colder, of course. 17 in Homer, 6 below in Kenai, 2 above in Anchorage, 9 below up around the Mat-Su, 8 below in Talkeetna, and 33 below around Healy. Once you got into the Tanana Valley, temperatures there were anywhere from 35 to 45 below. Eagle was 44 below after seeing temperatures earlier today at 46 below. Same goes for Ambler, and Bettles, I believe, was also 46 below earlier today. 36 below around Yukon Flats. The Arctic coast saw temperatures from 10 to about 25 below. Around Wainwright, though, it was showing 2 above. Around Nome, 4 below. Most of Norton Sound was looking at temps between 10 and 15 below. Unalakleet was 11 below. McGrath, 25 below. Bethel, not quite as bad, but 4 below is cold enough. 10 above there for Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island showing 5 above. The Alaska Peninsula in the 30s and 40s. The Pribilofs above freezing with Kodiak Island 1 degree below that mark. King Salmon and Dillingham in the single digits. Cape Newingham, 25, I should say, and 30s and 40s for the central and western parts of the Aleutians. Overnight lows tonight, as you would expect, with a clear, dry sky. Great for aurora viewing, only if you want to stay on the inside of your patio door, perhaps. Temperatures between 35 and 45 below for many parts around the Tanana Valley, north and eastward into the upper Yukon, Fort Yukon, and Arctic Village, likely some of the coldest spots, as well as Northway and Eagle, as usual. High temperatures tomorrow really won't change too much, maybe edging up by 5 to 10 degrees, but that's still substantially cold air. 30s and 40s for southeast, 20s around Prince William Sound, single digits for the Cook Inlet cities there, including Anchorage, 5 in Talkeetna, 35 below in Fairbanks. And as you get out into the mid-Yukon Valley around Galena, temperatures may moderate somewhat. There was some milder air trying to work its way in, but not by much, probably 25 to 35 below there. Unalakleet, 1 below 6 above in Nome, the Arctic coast and North Slope, likely anywhere 15 to 30 below. The Alaska Peninsula in the 20s and 30s. Some areas a little bit closer and south of Sand Point may reach 40 degrees or more. 35 in Kodiak and low 40s for a large part of the chain. One exception, Shemya at 36. Flying weather shows IFR conditions across the northern coast, edging into places like Sitka, Gustavus, probably making it up to Yakutat. Most of southeast still under MVFR conditions, as well as the Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and the chain with IFR conditions from about Adak and west. North Slope conditions as well, north of the Brooks Range, likely looking at MVFR. And that will likely include Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass tomorrow, both at MVFR conditions. But as we saw all the way around the Horn on the Alaska range there, most of the passes should be VFR. While it is cold, conditions may be pretty good for visibility and even for turbulence there. Some areas closer to the Cook Inlet will likely experience a little bit of chop, as you'll see in a minute. Mentasta Pass we expect to be VFR. Tenedo Pass looks pretty good at this point. Portage Pass we'll call visual flight rule, and Chilkoot and White Pass also expected to remain MVFR. For eastern parts of the Gulf, so you can see the remnant of the storm that was working through southeast. Still some warm air aloft there, anywhere from 2 to as high as 10,000 feet south of Haida Gwaii. Surface freezing line, though, cuts north and west after Kodiak Island and heads toward the St. Lawrence Island waters. A little bit of warming here over the chain, anywhere from 2 to 4,000 feet. Elsewhere, of course, with temperatures at 40 below in the interior, we'll call that below freezing. Icing potential mainly above 4,000 feet and below 9,000 feet across northern parts of southeast, Yakutat, and out toward Kodiak Island, wrapping around that frontal structure as it moves eastward, and also south and west of the chain, above 5,000 feet and below 8,000 feet. Other than that, there just haven't been that many icing reports today. Of course, many of you probably took a break from flying. Tomorrow's jet stream shows high pressure is firmly in control of western and central Alaska and the Arctic, sending a huge surge of cold air down across the Brooks Range and making that move south and east toward the lower 48. A lot of folks in the 48 now are watching for that dome of cold air to break off a piece and send eastward into the Midwest. So soon enough that will happen. Low pressure also across the western parts of the chain is feeding that warm and wet air up the periphery of high pressure here that's got that blocked out right now. So the active weather is moving to the west and undercutting to the south as you look at the overall weather pattern around Alaska. At 9,000 feet, we see that northerly flow dropping the cold right into the heart of Alaska. No doubt is here. Across the upper Yukon and the Tanana valleys, of course, we're experiencing that now, but also that cold drainage flow setting up across southern parts of the Gulf Coast and southeast, still under the impression of southwesterly flow coming in with that warm and wet air. That's what brought you the snow, and more is on the way, of course, with low pressure around the Prince William Sound area. Winds will remain light from the north coming across the Cook Inlet into Kodiak Island. And our active weather pattern, a little bit there out across the central Aleutians with a south and easterly flow coming across the central and eastern islands, and more of an offshore flow around Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, and the Chukchi Seacoast. So turbulence potential with all that in mind. Mainly below 6,000 feet for southern parts of southeast. Below 6,000, you might experience a little bit of occasional to widespread moderate chop and a wide area of light turbulence possible across the central and eastern chain and also across the lower and middle Yukon and Kuskokwim valleys. That's a look at your aviation weather. We'll take a look at your marine forecast here in just a few minutes. Stick around.
Welcome back, everyone, to part 2 of lake effect snow showers in Alaska. I have Eric Stevens with me again here in the studio, and we're going to pick up where we left off last time, and let's kind of reintroduce some of the lake effect snow shower facts that you devolved last time. Just refresh our memories a little bit about lake effect snow showers.
Okay, lake effect snow showers are potentially heavy bursts of snow that are caused when cold air in the wintertime moves over an open body of water. The open body of water, like one of the Great Lakes in the lower 48, or say an ocean near Alaska, provides the cold air with a low-level source of moisture and heat. Heat is required to get an overturning of the atmosphere because warm air will want to rise. And by heat, too, we don't have to say 80-degree water, just simply water that is warmer than the air above it. In Alaska here, or even in the Great Lakes area in the wintertime, there's ample cold air. When that flows over the water, heat and moisture will boil up from the surface of the lake, creating convective clouds, kind of like a summertime shower or even a thunder shower, that kind of process. And we get convective snow showers that can be blown ashore by the ambient background wind pattern. That's lake effect snow. Some places in the lower 48 that are famous for getting this include Buffalo, New York, or Michigan's Upper Peninsula there.
Right. Well, you mentioned a bit about Alaska in your last response. This is a great segue into my next question, which is, do we have lake effect snow showers here in Alaska?
Well, in the sense of the Great Lakes, maybe technically we don't because Alaska doesn't have the Great Lakes in it, but the physical processes are the same for the oceans around Alaska. Maybe you would want to call it ocean effect snow showers, but just the nomenclature of the sciences called it lake effect. The idea is the same though, open water supplying heat and moisture to the atmosphere, resulting in snow showers in the wintertime. In Alaska, this can happen in the first half of the winter especially, or even the early fall, because the requirement is open water. When the sea ice starts to come down, that effectively seals the lid on the ocean and deprives the atmosphere of the needed flux of heat and moisture into it. And my perspective, I come from northern Alaska there, from Fairbanks and the Nome area, and my expertise or my experience is up in that area. You had mentioned before that we can see these kind of striations of clouds, bands of clouds moving with the wind down by the Alaska Peninsula. It also happens further north. Just a week or two ago up in the Barrow area, they were having snow showers. They weren't getting a foot of snow out of it, but there were a few bursts of briefly heavy snow. Classic snow shower environment. Ocean effect snow showers, if you will.
And the ice is obviously not along the Arctic coastline right now. It is open water, so it was the lake effect snow showers up here were present at that time because the ice edge is still far to the north and to the east, correct?
Yes, this is the time of year. If Barrow wants to get the ocean effect snow showers, it's got to do it in the early part of the winter. Once the ice is there, it's sealed off.
You did some work on a case study that affected the Seward Peninsula. I believe it was back in October of 2000. And this background information about lake effect snow showers kind of leading up to this. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, the Seward Peninsula snow event and what was going on there and how that tied in to this quote-unquote lake effect snow shower.
Right. Well, in October of 2000, we actually saw a combination of some very weak classic weather forcing mechanisms, the weather fronts that we see on a map. There was an old, decaying, occluded front hanging around western Alaska. This front by itself was very weak, could not produce much weather to speak of, but it managed to tap in to some lake effect mechanisms over the open water of the northeastern Bering Sea and to produce some locally heavy snow showers.
And this image that we are going to show up here on the screen right now, this is a satellite image of that particular event back in October 2000. And first we have this nice big picture of the state, and we see this big area of low pressure barreling on into the North Gulf coastline. But over the Seward Peninsula, there's a nice little band of clouds going moving over the area there, and
That's right.
that is the lake effect snow shower event that we're talking about. Is that correct?
That's the area we want to focus on. And when you first look at this image, the first thing that grabs your eye is that big corkscrew there along the North Gulf coast. But lake effect snow showers are pretty subtle in their spatial extent. They can be just little things. They don't really grab the eye from a satellite point of view as the first thing. But when we zoom in, we'll see that they're more prominent. On this image, we can kind of see from St. Matthew Island curving up northeastward toward the Seward Peninsula, there's a line of showers that gets more intense as we get toward the Seward Peninsula. That's the area right where that old weather front was decaying, but it was also grabbing onto some lake effect mechanisms.
Okay, and let's zoom in a little bit closer. And this next image gives you a really good idea of what was occurring that day. Boy, it's sure looks like lake effect snow showers to me.
Oh gosh, that's a beautiful picture.
Yeah. What's going on here?
Well, what we've got now, this picture was actually taken at night. It's an infrared satellite image of the Yukon Delta, Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island area. And we've got a string of snow showers extending from the lower left side of the picture, moving up to the right, and then heading for the western tip of the Seward Peninsula. Now, it just so happens that there was a weak boundary. That old decaying front was right along that line. You can find it, just connect the dots there. And also, though, the ambient background wind pattern was blowing parallel to this boundary from the southwest up to the northeast and then straight north into the Seward Peninsula, just following the line of those snow showers there. These snow showers were driven by the classic mechanism of cold air over open water. It was the exact time of year that Alaska can see these kind of snow showers. It was in October of 2000, before the sea ice had covered up this entire area.
So in this event here, we have the essential elements of lake effect snow showers. We have the warmer air, and then the colder wind blowing over. We have the warmer water.
Yes.
And we have the colder wind blowing over the water. So we have those two things.
Yes.
And we also have some sort of a frontal kind of dynamic going on there too. So that kind of added into this.
Right.
This particular case.
Definitely, it was teamwork, and the sum is greater than the individual parts.
Well, how much snow did some of these people get out on the Seward Peninsula?
Well, in that sense, this was also a lake effect kind of event in that you didn't have to go very far to have very different snow totals. At Port Clarence, 6 inches of snow over about 12 hours. In Teller, the village of Teller, 12 inches of snow in 12 hours, a foot of snow in half a day. And in Nome, not very far away, an inch and a half of snow. Hardly anything by comparison.
Boy.
And that's the way it is. Just like on the satellite picture, you can see you don't have to go very far before you're in or out of that snow. And that's something else I should mention too about the spatial variability. These snow showers, be they driven by a lake or by the ocean here in Alaska, when they're blown ashore, they don't last long once they get away from the source of their nourishment from that open water. And so they blow inland, and then they just snow themselves out of existence, and they fade out. So parts of Alaska that could see a lake effect snow shower are then by definition the coastal areas. Interior Alaska will not have this mechanism at play.
Right, right. Well, that makes sense. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm glad we had you in the studio today to talk about this, because this is obviously a real weather scenario that can occur up here in Alaska. So if folks are out there along the coastline and they see something like this on a satellite image, and you can get that on the internet real easily today, they'll maybe say, hey, I remember that lake effect snow shower segment that Eric Stevens talked about.
Snow showers happen here.
Yes, they do. Well, thank you for coming into the studio today, and I thank you for joining us here on Alaska Weather Facts. We'll see you again next time.
All right, time to get back to work on Thursday with winds coming onshore from 15 to 25 knots or so up and down the coast, anywhere from 9 to 14-foot seas. The highest there offshore of Craig and Klawock, with 15-knot winds coming in from the west. On the inner channels, winds may be a little bit stronger across the southern inner channels, a little bit less across some of the central and northern areas, including Stevens Passage, around 10 knots from the south and west with a 2-foot sea. And that'll probably increase a little bit more to 15 knots as we get into Friday. The wind direction's pretty much the same there. Coastal areas turning a little bit more to the west and southwest. Around Yakutat, though, there's still a southerly flow with a 9-foot sea on southerly winds at 15 knots, 20 knots coming into Sitka with an 11-foot sea offshore. For Thursday in south central, winds will be pretty light around the Cook Inlet, and we've taken out the sea forecast there because of ice at this point. Northerly flow coming down the Cook Inlet may ramp up to 15 to 20 knots or so. Freezing spray is an issue there, and that may continue. West and northerly flow around the Barren Islands and east of Kodiak Island as well at 15 knots with a 5 to 8-foot sea. Winds are pretty light out across the north and western parts of the Gulf and inside Prince William Sound with a 2-foot sea. That shifts a little bit more to the north and east, but keep in mind the Copper River Basin winds coming through the Narrows might be a little more gusty at times, so keep an eye on that as well. 5-knot winds outside of 15-knot winds from the south outside of Prince William Sound with a 5-foot sea. There we go. Southeasterly flow coming into the Kenai Peninsula, and the winds are picking up a little bit more now from the north around Cook Inlet on Friday. No surprise with the pressure gradient we're seeing. A 20 to 25-knot wind coming west of the Barren Islands and through Shelikof Strait up to 25 knots with freezing spray again. Still a threat. Northeasterlies inside Bristol Bay with a 4-foot sea. Southerlies should remain light south of the Alaska Peninsula with an 11 to 12-foot sea on the Pacific side. 4-foot seas again on the Bering Sea side, but higher gusts may remain again on the lee side of the Alaska Peninsula. 30-knot winds pick up on Friday with a 9-foot sea north of Cold Bay, and south and southeasterly flow also picking up on the south side. From the Pacific side, at 9 to 14-foot seas are expected there. Inside Bristol Bay, that's a northeasterly flow bringing 6-foot seas through the region. Across the Aleutians now, a south and easterly flow from Unalaska to Nikolsky all the way out to Adak at 30 to 35 knots, 12 to 13 foot seas there on the Bering Sea side, 6 to 9 foot seas. Slightly higher seas in the west and west central areas with 30 to 35 knot winds. Those become a little bit stronger around Kiska to Adak as we get into Friday. Winds still coming in from a southerly direction there, west and south of Nikolsky and Unalaska at 20 to 25 knots, and more of an east and northeasterly flow as you move west from Nikolsky out toward Adak. Northerlies out around Shemya with an 11-foot sea. Across the west coast, an offshore flow coming from the north and east. 30 knots there from areas north of Makoriak up towards St. Lawrence Island, east of St. Matthew Island waters, and easterlies coming out of the Pribilofs with a 7-foot sea. South of the ice edge again, northeasterlies continue there south of St. Lawrence Island. Those winds pick up to 30 to 35 knots. Looks like 35 knot winds from the north and east around the Pribilofs with a 12-foot sea on Friday. Again, freezing spray remains a threat there. On the north slope, a north and westerly flow coming across Barrow. Stronger gusts as you get out toward Kaktovik there, up to 20 knots sustained winds. Northeasterly flow south and west of Wainwright all the way into Kotzebue Sound, 10 to 20 knots. And as we get into Friday, very little change in that direction with the exception of the Beaufort Seacoast that just flips around as high pressure takes charge coming in from the north and pushing that colder air farther south. You get that light easterly flow. Some of the gusts then should start to let up across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast at that point. Here's a recap of what's going on tonight. The warnings and advisories across southeast for snow have been dropped and discontinued at this time, but it may still snow across northern parts of the southeastern parts of Alaska there around Haines and Skagway, maybe up to a foot or more for storm total there, maybe another inch or two again tomorrow. For south central locations, areas of fog still possible in and around Anchorage, the Mat-Su Valley, and the western parts of the Kenai. And a storm just south of the chain will skirt the islands just barely as we go through tomorrow. Some stronger winds there across some parts of the chain, but mainly south. Look for areas of rain and slightly warmer weather across southeast, and fog and gusty winds continue around the Beaufort Seacoast. High pressure will keep things very cold across the interior with temperatures anywhere from 30 to as cold as 50 below in some areas, especially the valleys. Areas of rain and snow return to Kodiak Island as we close out the week. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder. Merry Christmas.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.